Lost in my reflections about being treated like an infant, a sudden chill ran down my spine. It was that sensation that engulfs you when you perceive imminent danger, causing your hair to stand on end like a frightened cat. The van continued its journey, and I watched people pass by. Another shiver overcame me, filling me with deep fear and terror. It was like being trapped in a nightmare from which you cannot wake up. You know it's just a bad dream, but your heart races and you struggle for breath, you want to scream. And then, suddenly, everything stopped. Time seemed to freeze around me. The passers-by turned into static, silent images, as if they were part of a black and white photograph. However, I noticed an exception, an older man with an unkempt, several days old beard. He wore a long, weathered coat, woolen pants, and fingerless gloves. His hat was old and tattered. All his clothing was in shades of gray. The man in the gray coat greeted me with a malicious smile, placing a finger to his lips in a gesture of silence. He wove through the frozen people, performing the Kola dance, using each one as his dance partner. I wanted to scream, but my lips refused to part. I tried to open my mouth with my hands, desperate to emit a scream of horror and call for help, but I found myself in a hell where making any sound was impossible. Within those moments, the man in the gray coat concluded his performance with a bow and a devilish smile on his face, inviting me to join him. And just as fear consumed me entirely. Finally, the scream burst forth from my throat, breaking the silence and the paralysis of the moment. "What's wrong, Alec?" Mom asked, alarmed, slamming on the brakes of the van. "The homeless man on the sidewalk," I said, still scared, disturbed by what I had seen moments before. "I don't know who you're referring to, Alec, but there's no one on the sidewalk or walking around here," she replied, confused. Restarting the journey to school again. "But it's true! I saw him!" I exclaimed with a trembling voice and wide eyes. There were people walking, and suddenly, they all froze like statues. And there was a man in a gray coat who was moving among them. He wasn't like the others, he could move and he was looking at me, looking directly at me. My words came out in a jumble, a mixture of amazement and fear in every syllable. And that man, the one in the gray coat, started dancing among the motionless people. It was like he was in his own world, a world where only he could move. And then he made a signal for me to be quiet, putting his finger to his lips. I paused, swallowing hard. I felt trapped, I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. It was like I was in a nightmare, but I was awake, totally awake. And as I listened to myself, I realized that it was useless trying to explain what I had just experienced. There was no one, not a single homeless person, not a single person. What had happened had become something full of uncertainty. It was as if the world I knew had vanished, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the echo of the fear I could not share. Sunk in the back seat of the car, my eyes darted from window to window. Although I tried to act normal, fear enveloped me like a thick fog. The encounter with the vagrant had been too real, too disturbing. I tried to focus on the passing buildings, the trees swaying in the wind, anything that could take my mind off that man in gray. But his image clung to my thoughts, a mystery I couldn't solve. Had it been real or just a figment of my imagination? No matter how hard I tried to distract myself, the feeling of fear persisted, a constant reminder that something extraordinary and terrifying had crossed my path. I tell you now, I could only swallow hard, sunk in the seat as a sign of the fear that had been consuming me. Despite my sharp mind and young age, fear was a beast that knew no logic or reason, and at that moment, it had me firmly in its grip.